Hello again, my most amazing artists. Today, we're coming back to talk about how we create these beautiful winter mittens. So, let's go ahead and jump in and see what the next steps in this project are. Okay, for starters, let's review what we did last week. So, here on my paper, you can see that I have a watercolor background. Remember, we learned about the colors of the rainbow. We learned about a man who lives at the end of the rainbow called Roy G. Biv. Now, Roy G. Biv is an imaginary elf, but he is based on real science, and that's how the color spectrum is broken into its parts. We have R for red, O for orange, Y for yellow, G for green, B for blue, I for indigo, and V is for violet. So, after we got our papers back, we talked a little bit about patterns. Remember, a pattern is any line, shape, color, or symbol that repeats 3 or more times. You can see some examples of patterns on this paper. Now, these patterns just so happen to be a little winter specific. And there are things like Christmas tree star, Christmas tree star, Christmas tree star, right? Snowflake dot, snowflake dot, snowflake dot. So I have my patterns on here. When you get your paper back, you should see a pair of mittens on the back of your work. If you don't see any mittens back here, please raise your hand and I will come trace them for you. Now, the next thing that we have to focus on is cutting out our mittens. If you haven't finished your patterns though, you're going to need to do that step first. So I'm going to flip it over to the back, and when I'm cutting, remember, I always cut away from myself, and I use my paper and turn my paper, not my scissors. Turn my paper. Put that lazy hand to work. And voila, I have my mittens. Remember, when you're finished with your work, don't leave your scrap paper at your table. Make sure that it goes in the correct spot. The next thing I'm going to cut is going to be my arms. I don't want my mittens to just be floating in the middle of the air. So instead, I'm going to take this square and I'm going to chop it right down the center. Just one cut. That's all you need. Now, your arms are going to be a little bit longer than we really need them to be. So just keep that in mind as you're working. This is going to be overlapping a little bit. Like that. Okay? So I'm going to set all these pieces aside. And I'm going to get out my blue sheet of paper. Now, it is really important that you need to make sure you have your name and your class code on this paper. Whatever your class code is, make sure you write it here. And then you can flip your paper over to the other side. On this side of my paper, I'm going to draw some snowflakes. Snowflakes are not too difficult to draw. Watch how I do this. I'm going to start by drawing a tall X. After I've made my X, I'm going to draw a horizontal line through the middle. After I've done this, I'm going to come back and I'm going to add little arms onto each one, almost like a fork, to make my snowflake. It should have 6 sides. Let's see it again. I start with an X. Notice this snowflake is a slightly different size. And it is good to get a variety of sizes. I'm going to work my way pretty much all the way around the edge, starting with bigger, smaller, mediums, and I can kind of mix it up. They don't need to be going in a straight line either. They should be kind of random. Okay? And I could check and see about where I think my mittens are going to be, because we don't want to draw a ton of snowflakes in the center because that's going to get covered up. So I'm really going to work my way around the outside edge, almost like a picture frame, but I don't want them to be in a straight line. Okay, now that I have quite a few snowflakes on my paper, I can see with my mittens if there are any empty spaces where I think I might need to add more snowflakes. I think one could go right here. Now, once I'm done drawing my snowflakes, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to glue on my arms, but this part can be very tricky because my arms have to get glued on before my mittens do, so that my mittens are in the right spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoop my mittens up to where they're almost hanging off my paper, and I'm going to line these guys up with my mittens at the bottom of my paper. I don't want this part to hang off because then I'll have to cut it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up with the bottom of my paper and I'm going to use this glue. Now when I use this glue, we've talked about this glue probably before, we're going to twist it open. If you need help, raise your hand. Remember, we always hold it by the bottom. We never hold it by the lid because the lid might not be closed. So we don't want any accidents. I'm going to dip in here. I go dip, dip. If it drips, wipe it on the lip. And then I can go around the outside. And I'm going to spread this glue out. Now, it's really important that we don't see globs of glue on here. I should not see any white globs. So if I see something that looks like that, it's really important that I go back and I spread that out towards the edges. Okay? Sometimes you have to tilt your glue, but be careful you don't put it right next to the edge of your desk because it's very easy to bump it. And if we spill a lot of glue, then we won't have any to use. And it takes a long time to clean up a big mess like that. So you don't want to lose your art time by cleaning up a mess. So when I'm done, I'm going to twist this shut, set it aside, and again, make sure my mittens are pretty much lined up with my arms, and then I can flip these over, lining them up with the bottom of my paper, pushing them flat. Give it a little massage. Double check, is it in the right spot one more time before you put it down? Because once it's stuck, it's pretty much stuck there for good. Okay, now, my mittens are not going to be way up here off my paper at this point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to need to scoot them down here. But before I do that, I'm going to have to add some glue. So when I add this glue, I don't necessarily have to glue over the entire thing. I can just glue around the edge. So I'm going to add some glue here, here. But I don't have to add glue all through the middle if I make sure I go all the way around the edge. You want to do this pretty quick because if the glue over here starts to dry, it won't be stuck to your paper very good. So if it takes you too long to glue, sometimes it could dry before you finish adding your glue. Again, I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to flip over my mittens. Place them down low to where they're not hanging off your paper. Line them up with your arms and then stick them on. Remember, you can rub over this, but don't rub too hard because it is oil pastel. Mostly just pat it down. Pat, pat, pat. Okay, that looks pretty good. My mittens are just missing some fluff and a snowball in the center. And in order to do this, I'm going to use the same glue that I used before and 4 cotton balls. Let me show you what I'm going to do with the first 2. I'm going to start kind of towards the middle and wiggle this apart, stretching it out, okay? If it comes into 2 pieces, that's okay. We can still glue it down. I'm going to lay that across here. So as I pull, I'm going to check, does it fit? Does this fit? No. Does this fit? No. Stretch, stretch, stretch. Does this fit? Yes. Okay, so with these two, this is the only time I add glue to the background. I'm going to add a good amount of glue across the bottom of my gloves. It's okay if it covers up some of your patterns. Good amount of glue. If it's too little, it'll fall off. All right, push that on, hold it down, hold it in place for a good 10 seconds, pushing firmly, not super hard, just making sure you've got pressure on it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you can check it by standing it up and giving it a little shake test. Now, if that worked, you're ready to do the snowball, which means you're going to kind of puff these out. There's one. And I'm going to pull this one apart a little bit. There's two. And now I'm going to put it together to make kind of a circle shape. It's okay if it's not perfectly round. We just want to get it somewhere close, right? That looks like it could be a snowball, I think. So I'm going to set that aside. Paying attention to how big it is. Add glue in the center. And again, I'll take that guy, stick him on there, push him flat. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And voila, you have created your little snowball inside your very fluffy, warm, cozy mittens. These would be great on a nice winter day. And what's great about these is they all look sort of unique. So even though we're doing the same thing, I bet every single one of us picked different patterns. So we're going to have different mittens than our neighbors do. I hope you had fun making this project. If you get lost along the way, just ask for some help, and have a happy holiday.